Hollywood has always sold us a dream: glittering gowns, flashing cameras, and the promise of immortality on the silver screen. But behind those glamorous red carpets and carefully staged photographs lay another world. A world of whispered affairs, hotel room scandals, and studios working overtime to cover up their stars' midnight escapades. In the golden age of Hollywood, a starlet's reputation could be her greatest weapon, or her biggest curse. The men, of course, were praised for their conquests. Clark Gable, Errol Flynn, Howard Hughes, each was celebrated like a king for every affair. But when it came to the women, the very same behavior turned into scandal, gossip, and front-page headlines that could make or break a career. These actresses weren't just stars, they were tabloid gold, their every move dissected and magnified by a public hungry for drama. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on 8 of old Hollywood's most infamous leading ladies. Women whose names lit up marquees, but whose off-screen passions, lovers, and scandals made them legends in ways the studios never intended. Some of them leaned into the gossip, wearing their reputations like badges of honor. Others were crushed beneath it, forever haunted by rumors that overshadowed their art. So get comfortable, because this isn't the sanitized Hollywood history you've seen 100 times before. This is the darker, juicier side, the stories whispered in smoky nightclubs and splashed across scandal magazines. This is the story of 8 old Hollywood actresses who, for better or worse, became infamous for sleeping with everyone. And our story begins with the original It Girl. She had a face that seemed made for the silver screen and a smile that captured the reckless spirit of the roaring 20s. Clara Bow wasn't just an actress, she was the actress of the jazz age, the ultimate flapper, the girl who embodied the phrase sex appeal. And yet, for all her talent and charm, Clara's name became synonymous with scandal. Born in Brooklyn in 1905, Clara came from poverty so grim it bordered on nightmare. Her father was absent, her mother mentally ill, and Clara grew up in a home where love was scarce and survival was the only goal. Movies became her escape. She once said that when she sat in a dark theater, all the misery of the world just faded away. At 16, she entered a movie magazine contest, won, and against all odds, became a star. By the mid-1920s, Clara Bow was America's obsession. She was dubbed the It Girl after starring in the 1927 film It, and suddenly everyone wanted to know what she was doing, who she was dating, and what she was wearing. She wasn't like the other carefully managed Hollywood starlets. Clara was raw, natural, almost wild. She smoked, she drank, she cursed like a sailor, and she wasn't afraid to talk about sex in an era when women were expected to play innocent. And that's when the rumors began. The tabloids painted Clara Bow as the wildest party girl in Hollywood. Gossip columns claimed she was sleeping with actors, athletes, and even entire football teams. One rumor suggested she had affairs with multiple USC players after attending games, a story that was almost certainly fabricated but repeated endlessly. Others whispered that she was intimate with directors and producers who gave her roles. Her actual lovers included stars like Gary Cooper, Victor Fleming, and Bela Lugosi. But once the gossip mill started, fact and fiction blurred until Clara was branded as the girl who slept with everyone. Part of the problem was that Clara didn't hide. While other actresses were carefully groomed by studio handlers, Clara lived boldly. She went out dancing, partied until dawn, and never tried to disguise her Brooklyn accent or her working-class roots. In a town full of polished, perfect dolls, she was gloriously human, and that made her both beloved and scandalous. The press feasted on every scrap of her personal life. One newspaper accused her of immoral behavior after she was seen skinny dipping at a Hollywood party. Another ran a story about her supposedly wild affairs with multiple men at once. Whether the stories were true or not didn't matter. In the public's mind, Clara Bow was the flapper goddess who couldn't keep her hands, or her bed, empty. But behind the laughter and the headlines was a young woman crumbling under the weight of fame. Clara's mental health began to unravel under the constant scrutiny. She was called everything from sex-mad to morally corrupt, while her male counterparts were celebrated for doing the exact same things. The double standard was brutal. By the early 1930s, the pressure became unbearable. Clara tried to transition into talking pictures, but her thick Brooklyn accent was ridiculed, and her reputation as Hollywood's wild child overshadowed her talent. Exhausted, She walked away from the industry in 1933 at just 28 years old. She married actor Rex Bell, moved to Nevada, and tried to live a quieter life, though the tabloids never fully left her alone. Looking back, Clara Bow's legacy is bittersweet. On one hand, she was the brightest star of the silent era, a woman whose charisma helped define an entire generation. On the other, she became a victim of Hollywood's cruelty, chewed up by gossip, shamed for her sexuality, and discarded once she no longer fit the image studios wanted. Clara didn't sleep with everyone. She was a young woman who loved, who made mistakes, who wanted to live freely in a time that punished women for doing so. But history remembers her scandals more than her artistry. She was the first great Hollywood cautionary tale, the girl who had it, and lost everything because of it. And if Clara was the wild child of the 1920s, our next actress was the queen of unapologetic excess, the woman who never cared what anyone thought, and who lived her life with shocking honesty. If Clara Bow was the embodiment of the flapper, Tallulah Bankhead was something else entirely, something louder, brasher, and far more dangerous to polite society. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room full of Hollywood's elite, light a cigarette, make a dirty joke, and have the entire crowd eating out of her hand. Tallulah didn't just live outside the rules of her time, she smashed them with gleeful abandon. Tallulah was born in 1902 into a wealthy and politically powerful Southern family. Her father, William B. Bankhead, would go on to become Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. But from the start, Tallulah wasn't interested in politics, prestige, or playing the role of a well-bred lady. She wanted excitement, applause, and above all, freedom. And Hollywood, or Broadway, or London, was the perfect playground. When she arrived in New York as a teenager to pursue acting, she quickly developed a reputation as a wild spirit. She drank heavily, cursed constantly, and had no interest in hiding her affairs. In an era when actresses were expected to project chastity and innocence, Tallulah openly bragged about her sex life. Once, when asked about her hobbies, she famously replied, "I drink, I smoke, I chase men, and I'm a hell of a good time." But it wasn't just men. Tallulah was openly bisexual at a time when even whispering about same-sex desire could ruin a career. She pursued women with the same intensity as men, romancing actresses, socialites, and writers. Rumors linked her to everyone from Marlene Dietrich to Greta Garbo, and she never bothered to deny it. She once joked, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never mentioned women and cocaine." The press loved her because she was unpredictable. She would show up to parties half-dressed, shout obscenities on stage, and shock interviewers with her candor. Where other actresses lived in fear of scandal, Tallulah thrived on it. She once quipped, "If I had to live my life again, I'd make the same mistakes, only sooner." And then there were the lovers. Tallulah's list of affairs was so long and so legendary that even her friends couldn't keep track. She slept with producers, actors, politicians, artists, and strangers she met at clubs. The tabloids ran wild with stories about her escapades, and Tallulah did nothing to stop them. In fact, she often added fuel to the fire, making outrageous comments about her own experiences. One of her most infamous remarks came after being asked if she had ever been married. She laughed and said, "Yes, darling, but it didn't take. I'm devoted to the institution, just not to any of the inmates." Another time, she confessed, "I've tried every kind of lovemaking there is. I just wish there were more kinds." Despite, or perhaps because of, her outrageous personal life, Tallulah was a genuinely talented actress. She conquered the London stage in the 1920s, dazzling audiences with her performances while scandalizing polite society with her behavior offstage. When she returned to the US, she became one of Broadway's brightest stars, though Hollywood never fully knew what to do with her. She appeared in films, yes, but her larger-than-life personality was often too big for the screen. Still, Tallulah left her mark on cinema. In Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, 1944, she gave a powerhouse performance that critics praised, though the filming was overshadowed by reports of her wild partying off-set. She was known for seducing co-stars, showing up late to shoots, and sometimes refusing to follow scripts. But audiences forgave her, because when Tallulah was on, she was unforgettable. The thing about Tallulah was that she never pretended to be anything she wasn't. While other actresses were crushed by the weight of gossip and scandal, Tallulah turned it into her armor. She wanted people to talk about her. She thrived on being the bad girl, the party queen, the seductress who answered to no one. Her affairs weren't shameful secrets, they were trophies. Of course, there was a darker side. Behind the laughter and the outrageous quotes, Tallulah battled addiction for much of her life. Alcohol, drugs, and reckless living took their toll. By the 1960s, her health had deteriorated, and the flamboyant star who once ruled the stage and scandal sheets was a shadow of her former self. She died in 1968 at the age of 66, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance, chaos, and unforgettable stories. Tallulah Bankhead didn't just live scandal, she defined it. She refused to conform, refused to hide, and refused to apologize. In her own words, "Nobody can be exactly like me. Even I have trouble doing it." And if Tallulah embodied the glamorous recklessness of Hollywood's golden age, our next actress reveals what happens when scandal consumes not just a reputation, but an entire career. She was beautiful, talented, and in love with love, but her downfall would be one of Hollywood's most tragic cautionary tales. If Tallulah Bankhead wore scandal like a crown, Barbara Payton was its ultimate victim. Her story is not just about glamour and affairs, it's about how quickly Hollywood can devour one of its own. In the 1950s, Barbara Payton was breathtaking. A platinum blonde bombshell with curves that turned heads and a sultry smile that promised danger. For a brief moment, she seemed destined to join the ranks of Hollywood's great leading ladies. But her name would be remembered not for her films, but for the trail of broken hearts, ruined careers, and tabloid scandals that followed her everywhere she went. Born in 1927 in Minnesota, Barbara grew up far from the glitz of Hollywood. She was a small-town girl who dreamed of something bigger, and she got it when her beauty caught the attention of talent scouts. In 1949, she signed a contract with Universal and quickly began appearing in films. Her breakthrough came with Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950, opposite James Cagney. Critics praised her, audiences adored her, and Hollywood declared her the next big thing. But Barbara's personal life was already spiraling out of control. Barbara had a taste for excitement, and that often meant men, lots of them. She was romantically linked to Bob Hope, Gregory Peck, Howard Hughes, and Guy Madison. The gossip columns couldn't keep up with her whirlwind affairs, and Barbara didn't seem interested in slowing down. She loved the attention, the gifts, the power that came with being desired by Hollywood's most famous men. But her most infamous scandal was about to eclipse everything else. In the early 1950s, Barbara became entangled in a messy love triangle with actors Tom Neal and Frank Hot Tone. Both men were madly in love with her, and Barbara seemed to enjoy pitting them against each other. But things turned violent. In 1951, Neal brutally beat Tone in a fight over Barbara, leaving him with broken bones and permanent injuries. The scandal was splashed across front pages nationwide. Hollywood was shocked, but Barbara seemed almost amused. She posed for photographs with both men, fueling the tabloids even further. That fight marked the beginning of Barbara's downfall. Studios, always cautious about bad publicity, began to distance themselves from her. Instead of leading roles, she was relegated to B-movies, her career sliding downhill as her reputation as a homewrecker and bad girl took center stage. But Barbara didn't stop. She continued to pursue high-profile affairs, and the gossip columnists lapped it up. As the years passed, Barbara's beauty began to fade under the strain of alcohol and drug abuse. By the 1960s, she was nearly unrecognizable from the luminous blonde who had once lit up the screen. She was arrested multiple times for prostitution and drunkenness, her fall from grace documented gleefully by the same press that had once celebrated her. Barbara Payton died in 1967, at just 39 years old, from heart and liver failure brought on by years of addiction and hard living. Her tragic story was summed up in her own words from a ghostwritten autobiography, "I am not ashamed. I spent a lot of time in places I shouldn't have been, with people I shouldn't have been with, doing things I shouldn't have done. But at least I lived." Barbara Payton remains one of Hollywood's most haunting cautionary tales, a starlet whose hunger for love and excitement led her down a path she couldn't escape. But if Barbara's downfall was tragic, our next actress burned through Hollywood with such fiery passion that even her scandals couldn't dim her star power. She was beautiful, fearless, and had the world's most famous men at her feet. If Hollywood had a goddess of passion, it was Ava Gardner. With smoldering eyes, a husky voice, and a presence that made men weak in the knees, Ava was one of the most desired women of the 20th century. But desire has a price, and Ava Gardner's love life was every bit as legendary as her films. Ava was born in 1922 in a small North Carolina town, the youngest of 7 children in a poor farming family. She might have lived an ordinary life if not for a chance photograph taken by her brother-in-law that wound up in the window of a New York photo studio. That photo led her to MGM, where she was signed despite having almost no acting experience. She was raw, unpolished, and initially overlooked, but her beauty was undeniable. Her big break came with The Killers, 1946, where she played a femme fatale opposite Burt Lancaster. From then on, Ava Gardner was a star. She was nicknamed the world's most beautiful animal by MGM's publicity machine, a label she both loved and resented. She had talent. Films like Mogambo, 1953, and The Barefoot Contessa, 1954, proved she could act, but Hollywood seemed more interested in her off-screen affairs than her on-screen performances. And those affairs were the stuff of legend. Ava's first marriage was to Mickey Rooney, MGM's golden boy, when she was just 19. Rooney was a notorious womanizer, and their marriage lasted only a year. Next came big band leader Artie Shaw, another brief and tumultuous union. But it was Ava's third marriage that would define her romantic life, Frank Sinatra. Ava and Frank's relationship was a storm of passion, jealousy, and drama. He left his wife, Nancy, to be with Ava, causing a media frenzy. Their marriage was fiery, filled with screaming matches, reconciliations, and public blow-ups. Sinatra adored Ava, but their love was too volatile to last. Still, even after their divorce, they remained deeply connected for the rest of their lives. Beyond her marriages, Ava was linked to some of the most powerful men of her time. She had a long affair with billionaire Howard Hughes, who showered her with gifts but also stalked her obsessively. She was rumored to have romances with bullfighters in Spain, including Luis Miguel Dominguez, and even Ernest Hemingway, who adored her and once called her the most exciting woman of my time. The press couldn't get enough of Ava Gardner. She was photographed everywhere, at nightclubs, on yachts, in the arms of powerful men. And Ava didn't hide. She drank hard, partied hard, and spoke her mind with a bluntness that shocked Hollywood's elite. When asked about her reputation, she famously quipped, "I still smoke, I still drink, I'm still single. I don't give a damn." Unlike Barbara Payton, Ava managed to maintain her career despite her scandals. Her star power was simply too strong. But over time, the hard living took its toll. She moved to Spain, then London, retreating from Hollywood's glare. In her later years, she battled illness but remained a figure of intrigue, still glamorous, still unforgettable. Ava Gardner died in 1990, leaving behind not just a legacy of great films, but a reputation as one of Hollywood's most passionate and unapologetic women. She lived her life on her own terms, loving fiercely and without regret. And if Ava was the embodiment of passion, our next actress was the poster child for scandal. With 7 marriages, countless lovers, and one of Hollywood's most shocking crimes tied to her name, she was the star who seemed to attract chaos wherever she went. If Ava Gardner's life was a storm of passion, Lana Turner's was a hurricane of scandal. She wasn't just a movie star, she was a tabloid obsession, a woman whose every romance, every marriage, every heartbreak was splashed across front pages. She was glamorous, she was beautiful, and she was dangerous to love. Lana's rise to fame is a story straight out of Hollywood legend. Born in 1921, she grew up in poverty in Idaho and later Los Angeles. According to myth, she was discovered as a teenager while sipping a Coke at a malt shop on Sunset Boulevard. Whether or not the story is entirely true, it fit her image, a small-town girl plucked from obscurity and transformed into one of the most glamorous women in the world. She earned the nickname the Sweater Girl after appearing in a tight sweater that showed off her curves, and overnight, Lana Turner became a sensation. She starred in classics like The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946, and Peyton Place, 1957, proving she could act as well as mesmerize. But her career was often overshadowed by her tumultuous personal life. Lana was married 7 times, To bandleader Artie Shaw, actor Joseph Crane, restaurateur Steve Crane, millionaire Henry J. Topping, actor Lex Barker, rancher Fred May, and hypnotist Robert Eaton. Each marriage ended in divorce, and each added fuel to her reputation as a woman who could never be satisfied. But it wasn't just her husbands who made headlines. Lana had a long list of lovers, and the tabloids made sure the public knew about each and every one. The most infamous chapter of her life, however, was the murder of Johnny Stompanato. Stompanato was a gangster and bodyguard for mob boss Mickey Cohen. He became Lana's lover in the late 1950s, and their relationship was violent, passionate, and toxic. Stompanato was controlling and abusive, and Lana's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, despised him. In 1958, during a heated argument at Lana's Beverly Hills home, Cheryl stabbed Stompanato to death with a kitchen knife. The case became one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history. The courtroom was packed with reporters, and the trial was covered breathlessly by the press. Ultimately, Cheryl was acquitted on the grounds of justifiable homicide. She had been defending her mother. But the damage to Lana's reputation was lasting. She became known not just for her beauty, but for the chaos that seemed to surround her life. And yet, despite it all, Lana Turner's career survived. She continued acting into the 1970s, appearing in television series like Falcon Crest. She remained a glamorous figure, adored by fans who loved her resilience as much as her beauty. Lana once said, "A successful man is one who makes more money than his wife can spend. A successful woman is one who can find such a man." It was a line that summed up her wit, her charm, and her unapologetic embrace of her own desires. Lana Turner lived scandal, survived tragedy, and became a legend not just for her films, but for her ability to endure. But if Lana's life was a whirlwind of marriages and murder, our next actress turned scandal into comedy. With 9 marriages, countless affairs, and a tongue as sharp as her diamonds were big, Zsa Gabor became the very definition of Hollywood excess. If you wanted glamour, drama, and scandal all wrapped into one, you called Zsa Gabor. She wasn't just a movie star, she was a one-woman spectacle. With her thick Hungarian accent, endless string of husbands, and larger-than-life personality, Zsa wasn't famous for her films so much as for her lifestyle. She made being scandalous into an art form. Born in Budapest in 1917, Zsa came from a wealthy family and grew up in luxury. She was crowned Miss Hungary in 1936 before moving to America, where she reinvented herself as a Hollywood star. She was stunningly beautiful, with blonde hair, green eyes, and a smile that could melt the iciest heart. But what really made Zsa unforgettable was her personality. She was bold, witty, and unafraid to poke fun at herself. Zsa's film career included roles in movies like Moulin Rouge, 1952, and Touch of Evil, 1958, but acting was never really her calling. She was more interested in being a celebrity, in making headlines, in living a life of luxury. And live luxuriously she did. She was married 9 times, to men ranging from hotel magnate Conrad Hilton, Paris Hilton's great-grandfather, to actors, socialites, and even a toy designer. Each marriage brought lavish gifts, glamorous trips, and, inevitably, scandalous divorces. Zsa herself once said, "I am a marvelous housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep his house." It was a line that cemented her image as the ultimate gold digger, though Zsa claimed she was simply being practical. But it wasn't just her husbands. Zsa was rumored to have had countless affairs, her name linked to actors, directors, and European royalty. She lived for attention, and she got it. She was a fixture in gossip magazines, a star on talk shows, and a guest at every high society party. Her scandals ranged from catty feuds with other celebrities to a notorious 1989 incident when she slapped a Beverly Hills police officer during a traffic stop, a moment that only added to her outrageous legend. For Zsa, scandal wasn't something to fear, it was a career strategy. She understood that in Hollywood, being talked about was better than being forgotten. And so she leaned into her role as the glamorous, man-eating diva. She once quipped, "I never hated a man enough to give him his diamonds back." Zsa lived to be nearly 100, passing away in 2016 after a long and colorful life. By then, she was more a symbol than a star, an embodiment of old Hollywood excess, wit, and scandal. If Zaza made scandal funny, our next actress made it powerful. She was a pioneer of sex appeal in Hollywood, a woman whose sharp tongue and unapologetic attitude paved the way for every scandalous starlet who came after. Long before Marilyn Monroe, long before Lana Turner or Ava Gardner, there was Mae West. She was Hollywood's original sex symbol, a woman who built her career on innuendo, seduction, and scandal. But Mae wasn't just an actress, she was a writer, a producer, and a woman who controlled her own image at a time when women were expected to play nice. Born in 1893 in Brooklyn, Mae West started performing in vaudeville as a teenager. From the beginning, she pushed boundaries. She wrote her own plays, many of them filled with risque dialogue and sexual themes that shocked audiences. In 1927, her play Sex was raided by police, and Mae was sentenced to 10 days in jail for obscenity. Rather than destroying her career, the scandal made her famous. She emerged from jail draped in fur, smiling for the cameras, and instantly became a household name. When she finally arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s, she was already a sensation. Films like She Done Him Wrong, 1933, and I'm No Angel, 1933, turned her into a star. Her witty one-liners, delivered in her signature drawl, became legendary. "When I'm good, I'm very good," she once purred, "but when I'm bad, I'm better." Mae West was openly sexual in a way no actress before her had dared to be. She surrounded herself with handsome men, often much younger, and made no apologies for her love life. Rumors swirled about her affairs, but Mae refused to confirm or deny them. She simply winked, cracked another joke, and let the audience fill in the blanks. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Mae West was in control. She wrote her own material, shaped her own persona, and used scandal as a weapon. When the Hays Code cracked down on Hollywood content in the mid-1930s, Mae's career took a hit. Her innuendo was deemed too risque. But she continued performing on stage, on radio, and later on television, always maintaining her image as the bawdy, unstoppable queen of sex appeal. Mae lived to be 87, and even in her later years, she kept her sense of humor and her love of attention. She once joked, "I never worry about diets. The only carats that interest me are the number you get in a diamond." Mae West wasn't destroyed by scandal, she thrived on it. She made it her brand, her art, and her legacy. And finally, we come to the ultimate Hollywood icon. The woman whose name is still synonymous with glamour, sex, and tragedy. She was the brightest star of them all, and the most haunted. If you asked the world to name one actress who defined Hollywood sex appeal, most would answer without hesitation: Marilyn Monroe. She was more than just an actress, she was an icon, a myth, a symbol of beauty and vulnerability wrapped into one. But behind the platinum hair and dazzling smile lay a woman caught in the merciless machinery of fame, love, and scandal. Marilyn was born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, her childhood marked by poverty, foster homes, and instability. She married young, at 16, to escape her circumstances, but fate had bigger plans. While working in a factory during World War II, she was discovered by a photographer, and soon after, she was signed to a Hollywood contract. By the early 1950s, Marilyn had transformed into the ultimate bombshell. With films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, The 7-Year Itch, 1955, and Some Like It Hot, 1959, she became the most famous woman in the world. But her talent was often overshadowed by her image. She was marketed as the ultimate dumb blonde, a role she both played and resented. And then there were the affairs. Marilyn's personal life was endlessly dissected by the press. She married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, but their marriage lasted only 9 months, plagued by jealousy and arguments. Next came playwright Arthur Miller, a marriage that shocked the world, a sex symbol with an intellectual. But that union, too, ended in heartbreak. Beyond her marriages, Marilyn was linked to some of the most powerful men of her time. The most infamous rumors connected her to President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. The whispers of secret affairs, late-night phone calls, and political danger have never been fully proven, but they added to the aura of mystery surrounding her life. Marilyn's struggles with mental health, addiction, and the crushing weight of fame only deepened the public's fascination. She was often late to sets, sometimes unable to perform, and constantly hounded by gossip. The tabloids painted her as fragile, unstable, and sex-obsessed. But those who knew her described a woman who was intelligent, witty, and desperately seeking love and acceptance. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead at the age of 36 from a barbiturate overdose. Officially ruled a probable suicide, her death remains one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries. Was it an accident? A deliberate choice? Or something darker, tied to her rumored affairs with the Kennedys? We may never know. What we do know is that Marilyn Monroe became the ultimate symbol of Hollywood's double-edged sword, adored for her beauty, destroyed by her fame, and immortalized by her scandals. She didn't sleep with everyone. But in the eyes of the world, she was the woman every man wanted, and every woman wanted to be. These 8 women, Clara Bow, Tallulah Bankhead, Barbara Payton, Ava Gardner, Lana Turner, Zaza Gabba, Mae West, and Marilyn Monroe, were more than just actresses. They were trailblazers, survivors, victims, and icons. They lived in an era when men were celebrated for their conquests, while women were condemned. They were judged, shamed, and sometimes destroyed by the same scandals that made them famous. Some thrived on the attention, turning gossip into power. Others were crushed by it, their legacies overshadowed by whispers and rumors. But all of them left their mark on Hollywood, shaping the way we see fame, sex, and scandal even today. In the end, these women weren't infamous because they slept with everyone. They were infamous because they dared to live on their own terms in a world that punished women for doing so. And that, perhaps, is their greatest scandal of all.